Yes, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football update channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Saturday, the 6th of March 2026. It's 34 minutes past the hour of 9 p.m. that I do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda. And I wish to send my sincere vote of thanks to all of our new subscribers, all our usual suspects, the semi-regular suspects, and the non-regulars that have recently joined the channel. We appreciate you for all the continued love and support. For those of you that were part of our morning broadcast, thank you so much for making it worthwhile. I hope you did enjoy the show and you continue to watch our content. Today, as I had promised you, we did premiere a video that I had told you about, that I will be putting out about Arsenal. It was to do with my worries, my worry about Arsenal for the remainder of this season, because I do harbor some worries about this Arsenal side in the running for the Premier League title. Now, tomorrow, we equally have a video that should be coming out, I think tomorrow morning, should be early in the morning, around 9 a.m., possibly 9 a.m., 9:30, thereabout. It is going to be about Manchester United. We do explore what kind of manager do Manchester United need. Is it a very tactical manager? Is it a good player manager? You know, that kind of caliber, the likes of Ancelotti type or Zinedine Zidane, you know, those kind of questions that will be attempting to answer that question. But allow me have our audience tested just to make sure everything checks out before we start tonight's podcast. That I don't know how long it will last, but at least we do have some things to discuss. So I think our audio is good. My device tells me everything checks out well. So we'll be talking about Man United. So that video will premiere tomorrow morning. I hope you do look forward to watching it. It's about 20 something odd minutes. So please bear with me, because the reason that's why it became 20 is because we had to divulge into a bit of history with Manchester United, because when it comes to the managerial appointments with Manchester United, there's always a bit of context. There are things that we ought to dive into and things like that. So that's why the conversation is a bit longer, or longer than 20 minutes, compared to those that have come out recently that have been under, I think majority of them have been under 15 minutes. I stand to be corrected on that one, but thank you so much for those of you that have taken the time to watch them. If you haven't already, please go under the channel and watch my worry about Arsenal for the remainder of this season. Watch the other video is to do why the Premier League title race isn't over yet, despite Manchester City dropping points the other day against Nottingham Forest. But also, in case you need a recap or did not manage to catch it, we also have a discussion over there on the UEFA Champions League draws. Remember, those UEFA Champions League games are due next week, midweek, and we'll be getting to them to discuss them. So for those of you that are just joining us, kindly like the podcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it's your first time here. Robert Kesakos is my name. Now, a Real Madrid injury-stricken side take on Celta Vigo tonight in the Spanish La Liga. In as far as fixtures for tonight are concerned, of course, it's not the only game that will be taking place, but that is as far as the Spanish La Liga is concerned. In the German Bundesliga, Bayern Munich are up against Borussia Mönchengladbach, while in the Italian Serie A, Napoli take on Torino. Or those games coming at 11 p.m. for Real Madrid, at 10:30 for Bayern Munich, and 10:45 p.m. for Napoli. And then in the French League 1, Paris Saint-Germain are up against AC Monaco. While in the FA Cup, we have a game between Wolverhampton Wanderers and Liverpool. So the question is, why should we start the conversation? Because we have the FA Cup review and then we have Real Madrid. But I think let's start with Real Madrid. Real Madrid coming into this game on the back of a defeat against Getafe by a goal to nil. Things do not look pretty for Alvaro Arbeloa, and they do not look pretty for Real Madrid as a whole in terms of the Spanish La Liga title race, because that loss put them 4 points behind the table leaders Barcelona and the reigning champions of the competition. Real Madrid come into this game with a whole host of injuries and some few suspensions here and there due to disciplinary issues that we did see on the pitch. In terms of their disciplinary issues, Dean Hudson is absent through suspension. As well as Alvaro Carreras. Those ones have accumulated a good number of yellow cards and stuff like that. Then Franco Mastantuano, this one received a straight red card in that loss against Getafe, so he's absent. Then injuries to the likes of Eder Militao, Jude Bellingham, Joan Martinez, Dani Ceballos, Kylian Mbappe, Rodrigo Goes, David Alaba, as well as Carreras, who is suspended but also injured at the same time, does not leave that Real Madrid squad in very, very good shape. Because I think, and I stand to be corrected, I think Dani Carvajal and Antonio Rudiger could be the only defenders that are fully fit and available tonight for Real Madrid. Therefore, if you get to see them in action tonight and see maybe Aurelio Tchouameni playing in their in their center-back role, do not be surprised, So with that said, I expect to see the likes of Fran Garcia at left back, Alexander Trent-Arnold at right back. Expect to see Antonio Rudiger alongside maybe Tchouameni, or depending on what or who they can field. Real Madrid sign Boslai, not yet, but is a name that has been linked with a potential move to Real Madrid. I think Real Madrid could have an appreciation for the Hungarian international who is currently at Liverpool. Then in that midfield, expect to see Eduardo Camavinga. You could see Thiago Pina in that midfield because Jude Bellingham is absent. You could see Adagula. You could see Federico Valverde or Fede Valverde. You could see Vinicius Junior and then Gonzalo Garcia in that sort of setup. So that's the sort of lineup that you should expect from Real Madrid. Now, Real Madrid, over the last couple of years, have sort of slipped. Yes, I know they won the 2024 UEFA Champions League title with Carlo Ancelotti, but going by their performances from last season, they've definitely slipped. They've downgraded, and this season doesn't look any better. When you do remember that they were knocked out of the Copa del Rey by Albacete, who were eventually themselves knocked out by Barcelona by 2-1, I think, at the quarterfinals, that is not good news. They got beat by Barcelona in the Supercopa Hispana, and they are still in the UEFA Champions League, where they performed very unconvincingly, to the extent that they once again had to go through the playoffs when they knocked out Benfica by 3-1 on aggregate score. Then you look at the Spanish La Liga, where they have managed to compete quite favorably. They have let themselves down twice, I think, in recent weeks, when they lost to Osasuna, and then, of course, I think beat up against Real Sociedad in between there before losing to Getafe. So we're talking about a team who already managed to beat up against Real Madrid in as far as the first leg was concerned. They beat Real Madrid by 2-0. That's Celta Vigo for you. And Real Madrid were at home, mind you, So Celta Vigo has always been one of those stubborn sides or bogey sides when it comes to Real Madrid, even though Real Madrid have eventually won the majority, fair share of their clashes. I think that 2-0 victory for Celta Vigo from the first leg gives them quite the encouragement that they need coming into this fixture. In addition to Real Madrid's, injury concerns, really, then there's cause for worry. When you look at the two sides, it's 20 points that separate Real Madrid in second place and the sixth place Celta Vigo. That's quite enormous or significant. But nonetheless, I do not think it will face Celta Vigo coming into this fixture going after Real Madrid. Having watched Osasuna do it, having watched Getafe, I'm pretty sure Celta Vigo will equally come quite feeling confident. Marcos Alonso, players like Far Lopez, Willot, Swibag, Boja Iglesias, those are some of the Celta Vigo players that you should be expecting to see on there. Claudio Girardes. No, Girardes. I think that's the pronunciation. Claudio Girardes is the manager there for Celta Vigo, a team formerly also managed at some point by Rafael Benitez Maudes. At the time, the likes of Iago Aspas were some of the key players at that team at the time. So very, very concerning. So if Real Madrid were to lose this fixture tonight, then that would mean significant trouble for them, because going into the larger weekend, because Barcelona play tomorrow at 11 p.m. against away to San Mamés against Athletic Bilbao, a very unconvincing Athletic Bilbao, then if Barcelona were to win that fixture, then they could end up being 7 points clear of Real Madrid. So I do not think Real Madrid would want something of that type, even though, and because I do not think there's much confidence for Real Madrid in in betting their chips that Bilbao could beat Barcelona. It is a possibility, but we're talking about a very different Athletic Bilbao. We saw their horrendous performances, I think, in the UEFA Champions League. Right now, they are ninth on the La Liga standings with only 35 points. It's been a bit of an odd season for Athletic Bilbao. Nico Williams is not having the form that you'd love him to have. The likes of his brother, Williams, Inaki Williams, I do not think that the likes of Ohan Sunset have been at their best. So really, things are less pleasing over there. Isabella Martin, hi, how are you doing? Good to have you back on the broadcast. I hope you're doing okay. Anyways, whatever happens, Alvaro Arbeloa will know that his job is on the line, that anything other than a win tonight could possibly put him out of the job before they face Man City next week in the UEFA Champions League. Because while they play this game tonight, they will have a part of their mind thinking about their next week's opponent in Manchester City at the round of 16 in the UEFA Champions League. So they really, really have a lot on the plate with all the injury concerns they have at the moment. I do not think injuries are something that you can entirely blame on the manager or head coach like Beloa, but that's a bit of a headache, or should cause a bit of a headache for Florentino Perez to speak to the lack of quality in their squad depth or sufficient quality. But I must say they've been quite unlucky with some of these injuries, because Alaba had just returned. He came off the bench in that defeat to Getafe. And then they've suffered so many injuries, really, and it's not really, really good for them. Anyways, allow me move on from Real Madrid and switch my attention to Liverpool, because Liverpool are in action tonight against Wolverhampton Wanderers in the FA Cup. We're talking about a team that just beat them, about 2 days ago? Because they played on Tuesday. That means Wednesday, Thursday, and they're back at it. I do not know why that schedule was set that way, because I understand Liverpool have to play away in Turkey against Galatasaray in the UEFA Champions League next week at the round of 16 first leg, but playing them after just 48 hours, or maybe a little over 48 hours, it's not very encouraging. So we know Liverpool lost to Wolverhampton Wanderers by 2-1 in the Premier League. Totally, the FA Cup is a different competition, but Liverpool will know that really they need a bit of squad rotation. A squad depth is not something in their favor, is not something on their side. Whereas you could swap Georgie Mamadashvili, you could swap him in for Alson Ramsey-Specker. The question is, who do you swap for, Ibrahim Konate or Virgil van Dijk? Because Giovanni Leon is out through injury. And Joe Gomez, you need his cover at right back, because you didn't want to risk Jeremy Frimpong, who equally not so long ago had just returned from injury, because they are also without Conor Bradley because he's out through injury. Then Andy Robertson, of course, at left back to start ahead of Milos Kakes. Then in midfield, Ryan Gravenberch, Katz Jones, Dominic Soboslai, Cody Gakpo. No, I would go for maybe Federico Chiesa. I would go for Riongo Moha to start, and Hugo Ekitike. In other words, Cody Gakpo and Mohamed Salah will be a bit of a rest, because you have that crucial tie against his side in Galatasaray, who managed to already beat Liverpool by 0-0 in the league phase of the UEFA Champions League. So they have something to really worry about. But then also, it begs a question: do you risk making those changes at the expense of possibly suffering a defeat against the bottom side in the Premier League twice in a space of 3 days? I'm not sure it will leave quite the desirable report card for Arne Slot. So you could argue that it's caught between a rock and a hard stone, but particularly because their squad depth is almost non-existent. Why it would have been existent is where you have players out through injury. Conor Bradley, Alexander Isak, Wataru Endo, Giovanni Leoni. All those are players that are currently out through injury. Florian Wirtz is out through injury. So really, his wiggle room for squad rotation is quite very limited, because then you have to look further out to the youngsters of like Nyoni, of Riongo Moha, and things like that. On the other side, Wolves do not even have the luxury of making changes. Not because they cannot afford to make them, it's because they are only in one competition. That's the Premier League, where they're fighting for their survival. And even though they are fighting for it, it's not a guaranteed, unless they can be perfect and win all their remaining 8 games. It's not a given that they're going to win them, despite the fact that for the first time this season, they've won their last 2 consecutive Premier League games, beating up against Aston Villa and Liverpool by 2-0 and by 2-1 respectively. So it's not a given that they will win. So really, when you look at it in that context, then you ought to remember that Wolves are also going to give this a good go at it. Why? They're fully confident. We have just beaten Liverpool. We can do it again. That's the confidence they carry into this game. Otherwise, expect to see players like Jose Sa, Matt Doherty, Santiago Bueno, Krejcik, Jackson, Matthias Mane, Jean Belgrade, Joao Gomez, Rodrigo Gomez, Angel Gomez, David Wolfe, and Adam Armstrong, players like that really are the ones that you should expect to see from that Rob Edwards coach side in as far as tonight is concerned. So my gut feeling is tilting towards Liverpool to avoid the embarrassment, the humiliation of surviving defeat against the same opponent in a space of 3 days. That's where I'm leaning towards, but anything is capable of happening in as far as that this competition or that game is concerned. I'm moving away from that. Remember, this is the 50th round of the FA Cup, or essentially, as you'd love to see it, the round of 16 of the competition, the oldest competition in as far as English football history is concerned. So by continuation of the same competition, Arsenal will come up in the early kickoff tomorrow when they take on Mansfield Town at 3:15 p.m., while Chelsea will come on later away to Wrexham at 8:45 p.m. And in the late kickoff of Saturday, Newcastle will entertain Manchester City at St. James's Park. Then on Sunday, Fulham will be up against Southampton at Port Vale. That's at 3 p.m. Port Vale will take on Sunderland at 4:30 p.m. Leeds will take on Norwich City at 7:30 p.m., while West Ham United will take on Brentford at 10:30 p.m. on Monday night. So that fixture is not on Sunday, it's on Monday night. Please take key note of that. So where do we start it all? Let's start it with the Arsenal. Arsenal equally come into this fixture needing, and I mean needing, to rest some of those players who have played with visible signs of fatigue. Players like Martin Zubimendi, Declan Rice, Urian Timber, among a few others. They have played with signs of fatigue because those 3 players have arguably played the most number of minutes in an Arsenal jersey in as far as this season is concerned. So that's why they do need a rest as soon as yesterday. And therefore, some of those players have not been seen in Arsenal's training today because it's not through injury. I do suspect, like most, they've been given days off. They've been given a rest. They played on Wednesday and beat up against Brighton by 0-0. Very underwhelming performance, but nonetheless positive. They won, and that's all that matters. As they come into this fixture tomorrow, remember, Ben White has been absent through injury. Mikel Merino has been absent through injury. William Saliba missed that game away to Brighton through an injury, which has not been highlighted. What kind of injury it is exactly. Then on that list, add Yuan Timber, Martin Zubimendi, and Declan Rice, in my humble opinion, and perhaps by extension, Gabriel Magalhaes. You need to have them well rested to prepare for that game against Bayer Leverkusen that they will be playing next week in the UEFA Champions League away in Germany for the first leg of the round of 16. So it's something that you ought to think about if you're Mikel Arteta, who is still competing on all fronts, wanting to win the FA Cup, pushing for the league title, pushing for the UEFA Champions League, a competition they've never won before, as well as the EFL Cup, where they are already in the finals and are set to play Manchester City on Sunday, March the 22nd. So that's the context within which Arsenal go into that fixture. So that's what you think about. Then I did read a report, or at least some reports, that Maz Lewis Kelly is bound to miss that fixture through suspension. And because he got yellow cards in the game against Wigan and Port Vale, in as far as the FA Cup is concerned, so that would imply he's out through suspension. We know that okay. While I was making my Arsenal submission, I got a report, and this is from the Telegraph Football, saying Arsenal need to sell at least one first-team player this summer. And among the list they put up is Martin Odegaard, the captain, Gabriel Martinelli, Ben White, Maz Lewis Kelly, Ethan Nwaneri. The question is, who would you sell? I say it's very simple. Maz Lewis Kelly. Keep the others. I do not know whether you'd share the same opinion, but for me, if it boiled down to that conclusion, or to that, if push came to shove and I had to choose one of those, it would be Maz Lewis Kelly. No offense to him, he's not done anything wrong particularly, but he will be the player that I do perhaps sacrifice. Anyways, so in terms of the Arsenal setup or lineup, expect this to happen. Expect to see Kepa Arrizabalaga in goal. Expect to see, even though I wouldn't have loved to see him play, expect to see Ricardo Carafiori alongside Piero Hincapié. Expect to see Christian Mosquera, perhaps at right back, or in centre back alongside. Expect to see perhaps Hincapié and Mosquera, Carafiori at left back, and maybe Mari Solomon at right back. Then expect a midfield of Christian Nogard, Ebeleche Eze, Kai Havertz, and then Gabriel Jesus, Gabriel Martinelli, and Noni Madueke. Expect to see that kind of setup really in as far as their FA Cup fixture is concerned, because that's what you'd want. Still a very, very potent side, very strong, one that can go ahead and win for you a game of football against a Mansfield Town, or a very little known to me, not in virtue of their existence, but by extension of their approach as a team in regards to what they would bring to the table. So, but in terms of the predicted lineup, this is according to online sources. Liam Roberts, Kyle Cagnol, Deji, Fraser Tracy, Lucas Atkins, Aaron Lewis, Lewis Reed, Stefan McLaughlin, Will Evans, then Tyler Roberts, and well as Oates, something like that. So really, like I said, besides Nigel Koff, Mansfield Town is little known to me to the greater extent of the particulars of how they do apply themselves. So we'll wait to watch them tomorrow. Moving on from the Arsenal, let's go to Chelsea. Again, Chelsea up against a championship side in Wrexham. Wrexham is not an easy opponent, because Wrexham have been on an upward trajectory right from the doldrums of the not the very lowest of English football, but ever since Ryan Reynolds, the movie actor or the Hollywood star, took over them, they've been making progress after progress, in terms of have been on an upward trajectory. Now, there have been two club friendlies between Wrexham and Chelsea back in 2024 and 2023, and on one occasion in 2024, the two sides shared the spoils in a 2-2 draw, while in 2023, Chelsea put 5 past Wrexham. Now, in terms of their lineups, again, I would expect Liam Rasinia to make a whole host of changes in comparison to the team that whipped Aston Villa by 4-1 in midweek. That was on Wednesday. One, I would expect the retention of Philippe Jurgensen for him to get more match fit, because he was slotted in against Aston Villa, coming in for Robert Sanchez, who had had a very wanting performance in their 2-1 defeat away to Arsenal. So if you're Liam Rasinia and you plan to use Philippe Jurgensen in your UEFA Champions League game away to PSG, then clearly you ought to give Philippe Jurgensen this game and sort of get him match fit and match focused. Then in that centre back role, I would expect a player like maybe Mamadou Sarr alongside the Tosin Adrabio. I'd expected Jorel Hatta at left back, a Malo Gusta at right back, a midfield of a Romeo Lavia, maybe a Dario Esugo if he's back, fully fit, maybe an Andre Santos. I would expect Alejandro Garnacho, Pedro Neto returning from perhaps his suspension. Then Liam Delap to lead the lines. Yes, he did not paint himself in good picture during their during their victory against Hull City at the last round, which was the 4th round of the FA Cup, because he missed a golden clear-cut chance to put a goal to his name. On the side of Wrexham, I won't lie to you, I've not watched Wrexham a great bit. The last time I remember I had a glimpse of them was when Ben Foster was still their goalkeeper, who they had called out of retirement to go help them and things like that. So anyways, but I expect to see players like Josh Windass, Kaifa Moore, among others. So Chelsea, I expect them to be dominant and win that game. Maybe I forgot to give you my prediction for Liverpool versus Wolves. I'll go Liverpool 2-1. But the jury is out there. Anything can happen. Arsenal, Mansfield Town, I'll go Arsenal 3, Mansfield Town 1. Chelsea versus Wrexham, I'll go Chelsea to win by 3-1. Yes, those are my predictions for those FA Cup games. Quickly, I'm still speaking the FA Cup. Let's run to Manchester City, because they make the trip to Newcastle in the biggest game of the 50th round of the FA Cup, in my opinion. We're talking about two sides that have already met 4 times this campaign, each side winning by 2-1 in their respective Premier League encounters, home and away, and then Manchester City completing the double against Newcastle by 2-1 and by 3-1. Sorry, by 2-0 and by 3-1 in their home and away, or in their double header in the semi-finals of the EFL Cup or the Carabao Cup. Excuse me. So if there's anything you can count on, it's Pep Guardiola to do a number of Newcastle, because I think it's one of the fixtures that Pep Guardiola has dominated the most, or sort of won more times, more often than not. Because when you look, I think, through their last about 10 meetings across all competitions, you may find about 2 victories for Newcastle. You'll find a 1-0 victory. I think for Newcastle, you have to go back in the EFL Cup for the 2023-2024 season. That was in the 3rd round. Newcastle beat Man City by 1-0. Then you go back to earlier this season when Newcastle beat Man City by 2-1. And then also sometime in 2024 in the Premier League, that's last season, you'll find a 1-1 draw at St. James's Park. Realist, Newcastle can be a stubborn opponent at St. James's Park. Man City have been known to do a number over them. Now, the beauty about the two sides is that they both have responsibilities next week in the UEFA Champions League, with Newcastle going to be at home against Barcelona, while Manchester City will be away to Spain, where they will play Real Madrid. Now, when it comes to squad depth, obviously Man City have it the better when it comes to squad depth. So among the changes that I expect from Man City side, I expect to see James Trafford in goal. I expect to see I would expect to see a player like Nathan Ake, maybe Kushanov. I would expect to see Nico O'Reilly at left back. I would expect to see maybe Matas Nunes. Does he play, or you go with somebody different? Maybe you play a Rico Ruiz. I'm just thinking. In that midfield, I'd go with Nico Gonzalez, Tijan Riendas, and then Ryan Cheki, maybe Jeremy Doku on one side, Omar Mamush on the other side, and no, Omar Mamush centrally and the field for them. That's how I would set up against Newcastle if our Pep Guardiola. Then on the side of Newcastle, who, by the way, came through match day 29 by beating up against Man United by 2-1, despite being down to 10 men for the better part of that game following the sending off of Jacob Ramsey. And of course, they needed a penalty that gave them a lead through Anthony Gordon. And then Casemiro scored the equalizer on the other side before William Osula came off the bench to win all 3 points for Ed Howe's side for the perfect response in the aftermath of their own defeat at the weekend at home against Everton. They lost by 3-2. So in the changes that he made, he swapped out goalkeeper Nick Pope, who had been horrendous in their defeat against Everton, and swapped in for Aaron Ramsey, who gave him a man of the match performance in their victory against Man United with 3 brilliant saves. I think against Kobe Mainu, against Lenny Yoro, and another against Joshua Zaxi. If there's another I've forgotten, you'll excuse me, but at least those are the 3 most memorable ones. So you'll expect perhaps a bit of change in player profile. Maybe Nick Pope returns as, in goal to face Man City. I don't think that would be too bad a change. With the injuries that they have, I think Tino Livramento, last I checked, was injured. So you could expect to see maybe Kieran Trippier come in, Lewis Hall, or you go with Lewis Miley. Instead of Malik Theo and Dan Burn, I'd go with Steven Botman if he's available. I'd go with Fabian Schär if he's available. In that midfield, I'd go with the likes of Joe Willock, Sandro Tonali and Chellington, maybe, because Jacob Ramsey is suspended anyway. So that leaves him without that option. And Bruno Guimaraes has been out through injury. Then Anthony Elanga, I'd go with William Osula, I'd go with Harvey Barnes. So, maybe in that setup, Nick Voltmada centrally, and then William Osula to the side. So that's how I would go about it, because both sides, like I said, will go through that fixture with part of their minds preoccupied with with the danger that lies in the back, with Barcelona coming to the UK and Man City making the trip to Spain to play Real Madrid. So that's my thought on that. Then moving on Sunday, like I told you, Fulham are up against Southampton. Ghana, hi Guna C. Hi, how are you doing? Why are you joining us from Guna C? Guys, kindly like the broadcast, but also please consider subscribing to the channel. If it is your first time here, thank you so much. Guna C, I think it's obvious you support Arsenal, but the question is, where are you joining us from tonight? For me, I'm coming to you live from Kampala, and Robert Kesakos is my name. It's 7 minutes past 10 p.m. here in Kampala, Uganda. Then in the other fixtures, Sunderland, of course, up against Port Vale. I do fancy Sunderland to get to do a number on Port Vale, as I do expect a very close contest between Fulham and Southampton, but I would trust Fulham to edge it. Then Leeds United against Norwich City will be a very, very difficult one. But Daniel Fakir, by the way, he's suspended for 1 match. He has a touchline ban of 1 match and has been fined £8,000 for unprofessional conduct, or at least going after the referees in the aftermath of their 1-0 defeat against Manchester City. Then West Ham against Brentford, that game will come on Monday night. Perhaps we'll find time on Monday morning or for that game to have a deeper look into it. But West Ham need any win they can get, not because it guarantees them going to the next level, but because they need all the momentum they can gather in their battle against relegation, following that 1-0 victory against Fulham in midweek this week, while Brentford played to a goalless draw away to AFC Bournemouth. So those are the FA Cup fixtures that will be coming your way. For those of you that are interested, like I said, there's no Premier League this weekend. after the FA Cup games, teams will be getting back to their routines or to their responsibilities in the UEFA Champions League, the UEFA Europa League, and the UEFA Conference League between Tuesday, the 10th, 11th, Wednesday, and the 12th next week, midweek. Then, of course, then the weekend will come with the official match day 30 of the Premier League. And then after that, we'll have the reverse fixtures for the round of 16 of the respective UEFA competitions, and things will move on like that into the weekend of March 21st, March 22nd, for which Arsenal will be playing the finals of the Carabao Cup, while other teams will be going about their business with the official match day 31 of the Premier League. Arsenal have already played their game that they were supposed to play that weekend, whereas Man City's game is supposed to be against Crystal Palace. They were yet to reschedule that one because at the time when Man City would have played that game, Crystal Palace had engagements in the playoffs of the UEFA Conference League. All right. Okay. Let's move on and talk about what else there is. Okay. Briefly, before we get into what else there is to come in the weekend, like I told you tonight, there's a game between AC Monaco and Paris Saint-Germain. These two sides are met in the UEFA Champions League. Let me see. I think the lineups are officially out. They have been confirmed. PSG against Monaco. The two sides met in the playoffs of the UEFA Champions League, and PSG knocked out AC Monaco 5-4 on aggregate score, with PSG winning the first leg away to Monaco by 3-2, coming from 2 goals down. Monaco getting a red card in that one, as they did in the second leg, thanks to that red card given to what's his name? Koulibaly. Yes, it was Koulibaly. So, but it ended in a 2-2 draw, the reverse fixture. So it's going to be a very, very highly contested fixture. But here are the lineups as revealed. Matev Safanov, the Russian goalkeeper, is in goal for PSG. I don't know why they dropped Lucas Chavelia, who they bought to replace Gianluigi Donnarumma, but Akraf Hakimi is in at right back. Ilya Zabani has come in for Marquinhos, alongside Willan Pacho and Nuno Mendes at left back. Warren Zaire Emery is in for Fabian Ruiz. Vitinha in, Pedro Fernandes in for Joao Neves. Desiree Doué up front alongside Bradley Bacola and Kivica Kvaratskhelia are the ones leading the lines. On the bench, PSG have Lucas Chavelia, they have Lucas Belardo, Marquinhos, Lucas Hernandez, Lee Kang-in, Goncalo Ramos, Ousmane Dembele, Sene Mayuru, and Ibrahim Mbaye. In the absentees through injury are Joao Neves, Fabian Ruiz, as well as Quinten Njatuo. Then on the side of AC Monaco, they have Philippe Cohn in goal. They have Dennis Zakaria. They have Wout Faes. They have Vanderson. They have Thilo Kea. They have Liam Kamara. They have Mamadou Koulibaly in midfield. They have Carlo Henrique. They have Bamba. They have Akleucho and also Florian Balogun leading the lines. On their bench, they have Jan Lienard. They do have Jordan Tez. Jordan Tez scored in that 2-2 draw against PSG in the reverse fixture of the UEFA Champions League. Among Mika Biliath, for the Arsenal fans, you ought to remember that one. He was at Arsenal in the academy before he made the move, I think, to some club in Austria, where he left and then joined Monaco. So Ansu Fati is on the bench. Of course, Paul Pogba is out through injury. The likes of Takumi Minamino, Lucas Radicki, Ouattara, Kassoum Ouattara, Eric Dier, Crepin Diatta are all out through injury for the side of Monaco, who are under the charges of Sebastian Pocognoli, while Luis Enrique is in the dugout for the side of PSG. Now, let's see if we have the lineups confirmed for Real Madrid briefly before we go into the action that is coming ahead for the rest of the weekend from elsewhere in Europe. So Real Madrid have Thibaut Courtois in goal, Tchouaméni, Antonio Rudiger, Trent Arnold, Fran Garcia, Thiago Pina, Camavinga, Adagula, Vinicius Junior, Valverde, and Gonzalo Garcia, pretty much as we predicted or anticipated. So the unchanged on the bench. Oh, oh, nothing is even confirmed on bench really. Anyways, moving on elsewhere, what's to come in as far as the other leagues are concerned for the weekend. In the Spanish La Liga on Saturday at 4 p.m., Osasuna will be up against Mallorca at 6:15 p.m. Girona will play away to Levante, while at 8:30 p.m., Atletico de Madrid will be at home against Real Sociedad. And in the late kickoff at 11 p.m., Barcelona will take on Athletic Club. In the German Bundesliga, Heidenheim will be up against Hoffenheim. This game's kickoff all at 5:30 p.m. Freiburg will be up against Bayer Leverkusen. Mainz 05 will be up against VfB Stuttgart. RB Leipzig will take on Augsburg, while Wolfsburg will be up against Hamburg. Then at 8:30 p.m., FC Cologne will take on Borussia Dortmund. That's for the German Bundesliga. In the Italian Serie A, at 5 p.m. on Saturday, Cagliari will be at home against Como, while at 8 p.m. Atlanta will be at home against Udinese, and at 10:45 p.m. Juventus will take on Pisa. In the French League One, Nantes will be up against Angers at 7 p.m., while at 9 p.m. Auxerre will take on Strasbourg, and then at 5 minutes past 11 p.m., Toulouse will entertain Olympique Marseille. Olympique Marseille got knocked out in the Coupe de France, I think by Toulouse, still on post-match penalties recently. Yeah. Then on Super Sunday, still in the other in the other leagues across Europe, is that in the Spanish La Liga, Villarreal at 4 p.m. will be up against Elche. At 6:15 p.m., Getafe will take on Real Betis. Getafe fresh from that 1-0 victory against Real Madrid, while at 8:30 p.m., Sevilla will take on Rayo Vallecano, and in the late kickoff at 11 p.m., Valencia will be up against Deportivo Alves. In the German Bundesliga, St. Pauli at 5:30 p.m. will take on Eintracht Frankfurt, while at 7:30 p.m., Union Berlin will be up against Werder Bremen. And then in the Italian Serie A, Lecce will be up against Cremonese at 2:30 p.m., while at 5 p.m., Bologna will take on Hellas Verona. Fiorentina will be in action against Parma at the same kickoff time, while at 8 p.m., Genoa will take on AC Roma. Now, at 10:45 p.m. on Super Sunday, we'll have the Milan derby between AC Milan and Inter Milan. Remember, going into that fixture, Inter Milan are at the summit of the Italian Serie A standings with 10 points ahead of AC Milan. So they will be looking to perhaps reduce on that point gap. AC Milan, the last thing they would want to do is be embarrassed. That's Maximiliano Allegri coming up against Christian Chivu in as far as the Italian Serie A Milan derby is concerned. I don't know how we missed that one. Perhaps it's something we ought to have discussed, because AC Milan have looked good this season, although they have drawn one too many games under the charges of Massimiliano Allegri, while Inter Milan have almost been nearly perfect under Christian Chivu there. At the end of the season, you expect them to lose some really edging goalkeepers, perhaps the likes of Francesco Acerbi, Jan Sommer, who knows. Anyways, on Super Sunday in League One, you have Lens against Metis, Brest will be up against Le Havre, Lille will be up against Lorient, while Nice will take on Rennes, and Lyon will take on Paris FC. So those are the fixtures from the other major leagues that will be coming your way in as far as this weekend is concerned. But for me, I think on Super Sunday, I'll take keen interest in that game between AC Milan and Inter Milan. Very, very big game to come away in as far as the two sides are concerned. Both sides have some injuries to contend with going into that fixture. Ruben Loftus-Cheek is out with a broken jaw. Mateo Gabia, Santiago Gimenez, as well as David Batesagi are there for the side of AC Milan, while Lautaro Martinez the captain for Inter Milan, is out with a calf injury, while Angie Boni is also out with a muscular injury in that regard. So it has promised to be a very, very entertaining fixture in as far as the Milan derby goes. So, guys, your thoughts on that and more in as far as the weekend action is there for you? What are you looking forward to? Of course, on Saturday, I'll be watching the FA Cup. I'll be watching Arsenal. I'll watch Man City later on. Possibly, I'll be watching Man City alongside the Barcelona game on Saturday night. That's my hope, provided, all factors kept constant, because sometimes you can plan for one thing and then life plans for something entirely different. Hi, Daniel Tuton. He says, I am at the Liverpool game. Do you mind taking a photo? Oh, does even the chat line allow for a photo? I don't think it allows for a photo to be sent. But how is it? How is the environment over there? I know the game kicks off in about 40 minutes at time. Really, I think we will win by 2-1. I wish you the best of luck. That's my prediction for Liverpool to win by 2-1. I wish you the best of luck, because in any case, like I said, Liverpool are going to be desperate to avoid a double humiliation, losing to the same side in a space of 3 days, not just any side, but Wolverhampton Wanderers of all teams. Bye-bye to you, Daniela Tuton, and thank you so much for sparing a moment to be part of tonight's discussion. Of course, when it comes to the larger football debate, some of the ongoing debate or discussion has been revolving around Arsenal in regards to how they play bad football that is not entertaining, and things like that. Now, the ends justify the means. Arsenal playing to win, and Fabian Hassler said he can never try to win in the manner in which Arsenal are trying to do it. And alas, I mean, you're not even contending for any title. So how would you play to win? So anyways, somebody said it perfectly for me. It was by Roy Jennings. You can check him out. Roy Jennings said, entertainment is a consequence of winning. And then he also added to say, which I certainly agree with him, Arsenal or Mikel Arteta does not owe it to anybody to play entertaining football, but he owes it everything in every aspect to win games of football, for not just Arsenal, for the fans and for his bosses that are backed him, that want silverware. So whatever it takes to win the league title, he will try to do that. Whether he succeeds, that's a different story, but at least he will attempt to do that. Whether you think he's playing haram football, whether you believe he's being too conservative, whether you believe it's through time wasting, whether you believe it's through unconventional means, whatever the case you may want to make for it, he has no responsibility. He does not owe you any entertainment. Those Arsenal fans, majority of them, I do not speak for every Arsenal fan, but majority of them, I want to believe that will be happy at the end of every match day, from now on, with 8 games left for them to play in the Premier League, that they will end up with 3 points, as opposed to be entertaining and not winning. Because Arsenal have played entertaining football before. Historically, Arsenal have been blamed for being soft, for lacking grit, for not being hard enough. Now, they've become those things, and now people are criticizing them for being very good at those things, for having the grit, for having the fight in them, for going toe-to-toe with teams physically, for finding ways to get over low blocks that they play against week in, week out, for finding solutions to what they have always been criticized about. So, like Darren Bent once said, Mika Richards, the former Manchester City right back, like he said, when it's Arsenal, everybody's got something to say. But when somebody different, suddenly the conversation is much different. Do you share the same school of thought? Do you share the same sentiments? When it comes to that, let me know down in the comment section if you share or hold similar views. Otherwise, you'll allow me wrap it up here. I wish to say thank you so much, Lam, then Isabella Martin, Guna, Daniel Tuton, and every single one of you that has been part of tonight's broadcast, whether you liked, whether you did like, but were spared any minute to be part of us. Thank you so much for dedicating the time to be part of our broadcast. For those of you that watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended, we do not take your love and support for granted. We appreciate you a great deal. You do us a lot of good by watching our content. Keep watching, keep liking, keep commenting, keep sharing with your colleagues and friends. And on a special note, I wish to say thank you to my colleague, Mwami Isaac. Thank you so much for all the efforts you take to support Football Tribe UG in every aspect, in every whatever means necessary that you can afford to. Keep doing the same, and God bless you, and not just during this time, but for the rest of your time. Otherwise, stay blessed and have a good night. Bye-bye for now.